now we're going to, can we have Astra Taylor, please? Astra, are you there?
I am. Can you all see me?
Yeah, see and hear you.
Okay, see and hear me. Okay, great. I just want to echo everyone's thanks. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you, Nika. Thank you, everyone. A few days before David passed away, I got what would be my last text from him. We were trying to figure out a time to talk, and he said, "No idea of time. Time is being reinvented." And for our friend David, everything was reinventable: our economy, our society, our values, ourselves, and even apparently time itself. And I was thinking about how time was different with David. I went through our correspondence after he passed away and was struck by how instantaneously we became friends. A single coffee in the West Village in 2009 was all it took. And that was just how David operated. I don't think I was particularly unique. There was an openness about him, a willingness to let people in. And, given how prolific he was as a writer, incredibly prolific, he obviously spent a lot of time reading and in the solitude of writing. But he was also incredibly gregarious and always up for a phone call or for gossip, for a walk around an antique market. And that sociability fed into his activism. In August of 2011, David sent me an email trying to get me to go to the planning meetings of what would become Occupy Wall Street. And he basically said, "Look, this is a lot of fun for geeks like me." And I didn't make it to those planning meetings, but I went the first day. And I remember how pleased David was at Zuccotti Park. And he was like this radical maitre d', like welcoming us into the space and checking on our progress as we had these democratic assemblies. And David, he didn't push me into the Occupy movement, but he kept opening these doors for me, and I kept walking through them. And I became more and more involved and more invested. And soon he roped me into a movement focused on, and it came out of Occupy, a movement focused on the problem of debt. And one of our opening salvos was a propaganda video featuring a dozen of our friends in balaclavas dancing around a burning trash can, lighting their debt notices on fire. And David is, there among the throngs dancing. And he wrote this communique style voiceover. And I just want to read a few lines. He wrote, "We ultimately understand that to be able to take care of our children, our friends, our families, the people we care about, is a value that no accountant can ever measure, that no government loan administrator or hedge fund manager can ever have the right to take away from us. Every dollar we take from a fraudulent subprime mortgage speculator, every dollar we save from a collection agency is a tiny piece of our own lives that we can give back to our communities, to those we love and respect." And for David, the debt resistance movement he helped inspire was all about love. And over time, it's grown into a proper organizing effort. In the US, my friends and many of us have carried the torch, and we've erased, because of David, we've helped erase billions and billions of dollars of debt for people across this country. And that's just one of the many things that he helped ignite. David, as we all know, he had very strong views, but he wasn't dogmatic. He wasn't sectarian. I'll never forget a public conversation we had in 2019 where he talked about the pleasure of changing your mind, right? Like and he said it was a form of political happiness, like, oh, I can think differently, right? I can think something else. And David's conviction that our minds could be changed, that our society could be changed, was empirically based in his work as an anthropologist. And just, he was a curious person, right? So he was aware that human societies' value systems can vary wildly across space, across time. And that very often the stories we tell ourselves or the stories we're told about the way things are just aren't true. That all of these arrangements, all of these social arrangements, political arrangements can be transformed, right? But here's the last thing the point I want to make home is that David knew that you can't change those things alone, right? So you can write a brilliant best-selling book like Debt, which expands readers' minds, but really that's no substitute for social movements, for collectivities, for rebellions, for riots. And when David was in that mode of being an activist, he had this extraordinary humility. He was a peer among his equals. And I think he seemed the most happy to me just sitting in a meeting, in a church basement. And I really respected him for that, just how much he embodied his principles in those spaces. He despised affectation and abhorred hierarchy, even one that would put him at the top. So David may not be with us in person anymore, but his perspective remains extremely vital. His insistence on seeing things differently, on siding with the underdogs, on engaging people as an equal, on challenging the pompous and the powerful, finding joy in keeping that utopian horizon in sight. So I think we need to channel David's astonishing and heartfelt faith in his fellow human beings and refuse to lose sight of the possibility, not necessarily inevitability, of our collective liberation. So thank you for having me. And thank you, David. You wouldn't like us to owe you a debt, but definitely if we can pay it back, it's by continuing the struggle that you're a part of.